and your computer. Just want to make sure that everybody can see this okay? Alrighty, perfect. So, as Dan said, we have the guitar and that has 6 strings. So before we do anything or get started with playing any music, we have to talk about tuning because we always want to stay in tune when we're playing our songs. So Guitar Tuna is a free application made by Musician that I use it constantly on my smartphone. It also includes tuners for ukuleles and bass. So this is free and this is what I have on my smartphone. It works because it opens up the microphone in your laptop or your smart device so that you can start tuning. So I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna get started on the 6th string. So we have our, yes?
Can you put the link in the chat so that
Oh yeah.
people can actually go to it?
Yes.
Thank you.
So let me put that for everybody. Perfect. Alrighty. So we have that there in the chat. And I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of talk about the number of the strings. So the string that's closest to the ground, we're gonna call that our 1st string. So this would be the string there. And you can see that it also lit up my screen and said that I'm in tune in that E string. So just for reference, we'll have the 1st string be this one, 2nd string, 3rd string, 4th string, 5th string, and 6th string. So let's say I'm not in tune in the 6th string. So how we tune is we first plug it and make sure that it stays with the constant sound there. And you can see that the application, I like this application because sometimes other ones will just tell you what note you are, but this one will tell you if you're too low or too high, meaning that the string needs to be tightened or loosened up. So I'm gonna go ahead and pluck this. And I'm gonna move my guitar peg that's connected to that string away from it. And that increases the tension of the string. And you can see while I'm doing that, it's bringing it to the right note. So let's say that with the A string, I'm a little too high. We want to do the opposite, where we loosen the tension in the string. Until we get a little lower than we would, and then we go up again. Just because if we were to tune exactly down, up to down, it still is that loose tension. So in terms of keeping our guitar in tune more time, we always want to go a little more down and then go up again so that it stays a little tuned more in time. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that with my other strings. So the 4th string, that D string right there, I'm gonna pluck that, making sure that's in tune. The G string, B string, and then up again, E string. So I want everybody to kind of take a little time here on their computers and with the application and just make sure that everybody's in tune. Any questions? Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much, Freddie. I love this little app thing. If it's too tight, that means it's too high. And if it's too loose, that means it's too low.
Yes, because once we tighten the string, the note goes up. So the way kind of music in general works, there are 12 notes in total. So you can kind of think of the piano board where you have D and it goes to C, that's because it's going higher. So if you have, let's say, a tuner that doesn't say when you're too low, too high, and we're trying to tune the D, the E, but we're too low, it's gonna, I think this is gonna go close to a D. I'll say it's a D note instead of an E. So that means we have to go higher. The way kind of tuning works is that it goes alphabetically until G and then it starts over at A. So right now it's the tension is not there, and then adding tension and tighten up the note to there. A little too high. Let me go back down until I'm there. And I think the application's a little bit more accurate than the website. But you can tell too, after you're done tuning, you'll get a nice harmonious kind of everything, and nothing will be out of place. So if you're, let's say here, that's obviously really, really off in terms of tuning. So let me tune that up again. Alrighty. Any questions on tuning? I kind of went a little fast just for it, but really take your time to make sure that all the notes are right, or else later on you'll start sounding off a little bit. And you'll occasionally, before you start practicing, you always want to tune first. Alrighty. Any questions? Any hands? Alrighty. So now that we have our instruments tuned, let's talk about chords. So let me go and share the other page here. Let me see where it is. There we go. So I'm gonna put that also in the chat, just making sure that everybody can see this okay. Perfect. Alrighty.
I have a question.
Sure.
Are you gonna give us a few minutes to tune it? I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah, go ahead and tune up right now. So give everybody 5 minutes to tune up and see if they have any problems with it. The kind of difficulty to doing with a Zoom workshop is that I can't be around everybody, and sometimes the video quality and the audio quality doesn't help out too much. But I just want to make sure that everybody just takes a little bit of time to tune and just make sure that you're in tune. And if you want to download the application too. See anybody tuning? See anything else in terms of tuning? It just, as the more you do it, the easier it catches on to stay in tune. But let's go. Who is already in tune? Did you want to give me just a hands up? All right, thank you. Alrighty, I'll give everybody 1 more minute. And it's okay too that you're not 100% into, at least in the beginning, just because we do have a limited amount of time too, and we'll have this to recording a little bit. Alrighty, so let's move on ahead. So now that we have, hypothetically, all our strings tuned up and ready to go, let's talk about, I think Dan already touched upon some parts of it here. But just for reference, since we already numbered our strings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, we also have to number our fingers. So if we're all right-handed, we're gonna play the guitar neck with our left hand. And let's number our fingers there too. Our index finger will be known as finger number 1. Our middle finger will be known as 2. Ring finger as 3. And pinky as 4. These little boxes are called frets. So we have fret number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And I think Dan mentioned that some guitar makers like to put in the little dots there so you don't have to keep counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. But at least in the beginning, we're going to just be focusing on the first 3 frets here. So most of the stuff that we're going to be doing right now, we'll be focusing on these 3 right here. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of get your attention on this one here called E minor 7. I put it in the chat, but I'm just making sure that everybody can see this one okay? Alrighty. So we have right here 6 lines that represent the 6 strings in the guitar. The one on the very right represents the first string. Then it goes to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. We also have these boxes here that also represent what I was just talking about in terms of frets, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and so on. So we have our fret number 1, fret number 2, fret number 3, and 4. We also have a number here at the bottom, and that represents which fingers we're going to be using to press down on those notes. So the kind of magical piece is this little black dot and the number 2. So what this means is that we're going to be using our middle finger, our 2nd finger, and we're going to be placing it in the 2nd fret of the 5th string. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to put our middle finger right in the middle of the 2 metals there, right in the middle. So we're pressing down. Let me kind of do a little indentation here. And then you can see that I'm kind of doing it right underneath my fingernail. So we're going to be fretting or pressing down only that string on that fret. So again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we have our finger in the 2nd fret of the 5th string. And when we're learning a new chord, we want to go down one by one, just making sure that all the notes are bright and there's no like this sound that is very familiar for for beginners to hear. So kind of want everybody to kind of, after they press it down, to go very slowly, one by one down. Alrighty. Anybody hear any clankiness, anything, or does it sound pretty good right now? Alrighty. So of course we can't just do this all the time. So with chords, we actually press down on all the strings at the same time using the same force so that it kind of comes together. At least in the beginning, I'm just using the side of my thumb to kind of create that. I forgot to mention these little circles at the top. These just mean that we also play these strings. So these are called open strings in the chord. There are some chords like this little X that when we're pressing down on everything, we're not actually doing all 6 of them, but we're only doing that 4. So just keep that in mind for later chords right there, these X's.
So I can't see where you're pointing.
Next to that E minor 7, there's this F. And there are 2 X's there on the 6th and 5th string. So what it means doing those chords, that we, instead of doing all 6 strings when we're pressing everything down, we're only pressing down the 4 strings. So we're not using the rest of the strings here, just because it doesn't add to the chord or it makes it a little bit more muddy or not part of it. Alrighty. Any questions on that E minor 7? All right, tag it. We're going along. So next to that E minor 7, we have an E minor to the left of it. So it's very similar to that E minor 7, but we only have to add one more finger to that chord. So now, since we already have our second finger there on the 5th string, we're going to add our third finger, our ring finger, right behind it and press it down. And that's that ring finger on the 4th string of the 2nd fret. So with any new chord, we're going to go ahead and go one by one. Just making sure that all the strings are bright and there's no kind of clankiness to it. This is also the part that you're going to learn that your fingers are going to be very, very tightly squeezed together sometimes. And it's okay in the beginning if it starts to hurt a little bit, you can take a break, because usually in the beginning you only want to practice about 30 minutes because you don't have the callus yet built from pressing down strings constantly. And at this point too, you can see that I'm starting to build kind of this little arc around the neck here. This way, when I'm trying to play the other bottom strings, I'm not accidentally pressing them with the palm or my other fingers. So that's why I kind of have this little open space so that these strings don't get touched. In the back of the guitar, I'm kind of holding it like here, kind of hugging, just because it creates more support kind of when I'm pressing it down in the beginning. So I don't have like my finger way out here or out there, but just kind of lightly touching the back of the guitar. And you'll realize too, as you're kind of doing a couple more of these chords, that sometimes you don't need that much pressure to make the note. So kind of experiment with letting it go a little bit, or if it's not sounding right, pressing down a little harder. Alrighty, let's move along. So we've done a chord with one finger, we've done a chord with two fingers, and now let's go ahead and do a chord, a kind of a little more difficult chord, but it's a very important chord here in this C in the middle of the page. So as I explained before, in the F chord, we have this X at the top left. That means when we're playing this whole chord, we're not gonna brush that string. So I want everybody to kind of just give this chord a try based on what you learned just now, where to place the fingers. Alrighty, so now I'm gonna go one by one, and I'm gonna ask you to unmute so I can hear you go one by one in the strings, and I'm gonna start out with Jorge here. Let's see, anything, or do you wanna go less? Alrighty, we're gonna skip Jorge. Who wants to go next?
I think I got it.
Alrighty, let's hear it one by one, slowly.
Oh, thought I had it.
Alrighty, that sounds good. So I think, yeah, that was on the third string, and I think, yeah, you just have to make sure that your finger is not touching the other string.
Yeah, fat fingers is what it is.
Alrighty, that sounds good. Do you want to just do one quick strum? Alrighty, sounds good. Next up?
I'll go.
Alrighty. Alrighty, I heard a couple bits of the sound. So you kind of, once you start to hear that one, you can, let's say, I think I heard it on the fourth string. You can,
The third string, but yeah.
the third string? Okay. So if it was on the third string, then your finger might have been touching it a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Sounds good now. All right, next up. Alrighty.
I'll go.
Thank you.
I have small hands, so you might need to help me with how to fix that sometime.
I have the same problem. Don't worry.
Okay.
See, a little bit slower, please.
That one's hard for me.
Yes. Alrighty. So in terms of that one, I'll show you kind of my my finger position there, because I think everybody kind of has this the ring finger down. So there's this kind of weird. That's why my fingers are very, very arced. Gonna kind of move around a little bit better. Just because I don't want this one to, or this finger in particular, to hit the one, because it's very easy. I think a lot of people in the beginning try to like press down, which is not the best thing to do. You kind of want to have it right underneath the fingernail so that you can create that little arc. And so that, because you're not really like pressing it down like that, you're pressing it with your fingernail, underneath your fingernail. So a lot of these chords will have that same technique of this kind of press instead of this press. That's not great to do.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Just a while ago, I tried to load the tuner and it wouldn't work for some reason. So I have to check, and then I lost part of the screen and the controls, but I just got it back.
Okay, that's good.
All I can for now.
Alrighty, so let's go. So it looks like everybody's getting the hang of it too a little bit. So same thing, I want everybody to try to do this A7. So one of the things that I like, particularly in this chord chart, you can see that it also gives you options for alternate fingers. So if 1 and 2 don't work for you, you can try to do 2 and 3. Particularly myself, I'm more of a fan of the second one, 2 and 3, instead of 1 and 2. And again, anytime that you're learning a new chord, you want to go down one by one to make sure that everything sounds crystal clear. Alrighty. So, why chords? Chords are, I want to say, I always like to use cooking or food metaphors. So chords are kind of like the food that you're cooking, and we're going to talk about strumming in a little bit, but strumming is kind of the spice that creates delicious food. So chords, let's say if you've ever been listened to any song or music, you can kind of tell, right, that they kind of stay in kind of one note, and then something happens, and then they go to a different note. So this is the same thing that happens with chords. So I'm gonna go ahead and talk about strumming, because I think that strumming in the beginning gets lost a little bit in the mix. Alrighty, so now we have a couple chords. I'm gonna focus on this E minor 7, at least in the beginning, to explain a couple of things. So that's that second finger on the second fret of the 5th string. So a lot of popular music is written in common time or 4/4. So if you listen to the radio, you can start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and you'll start to get it that music follows this kind of certain rhythm to it. So for example, we have, even though it says ukulele strumming patterns, we use this for guitars as well. So the very first one, the all downbeats, a single strum. And we have that 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can take that 1, 2, 3, 4 and set it to music. So let's say I have that E minor 7. So that's just that one single string there. And the capital D means just down strums. So how I play this with that particular chord, it just be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a strumming pattern. And of course, you don't hear many songs that just go down, 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 down. So they spice it up a little bit. So once we have that 1, 2, 3, 4 down, we can add a couple things. So the second line, the downbeats and upbeats, there's a double strum. So similarly, we have the 1, 2, 3, 4 with the capital Ds. And we also have these ands with the up, meaning U for up. So how I would strum this, it would be, let's stick with that same E minor 7. It would sound something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and usually when I'm doing the up strums, I'm not strumming all the chords, all the strings, just because it creates this kind of very full and not letting it breathe. So I usually will strum down with my thumb and then up again with the side of my thumb, but only the first 3 strings. So it kind of gives it a little bit more bright. And I'll do this way more slowly now. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so those are the up strums. Of course, songs don't just stay on one chord for 5 minutes. So this is where the switches happen. So let's go back to that very first one. And I'm gonna do that E minor 7 twice. So that's for 2 bars of 4. So there's 1 bar of 4, 2 bars of 4. And then I'm gonna switch it to something else in that second part. So let's say I'm doing my C chord. So let's just say a C chord. So how that sounds, it would be E minor 7 for 2 bars. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then switch again. 2, 3, 4. Or a different chord. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The magic happens with the switches because there's that the need to work on the seamless transition between one chord into the other chord with no kind of long pauses. So when I'm practicing, I always say out loud, 1, 2, 3, 4 until I'm tired. Just because sometimes if we don't say 1, 2, 3, 4 or have like a little click machine, we tend to go faster or slower. So that kind of builds that discipline of keeping it in pace, in tune. So let me take that and do, let's skip here to number 3. So of course, not every song is that for a long time. So let's take that E minor 7 on the number 3, and this is kind of a combination of the first 2, where the first bar is just 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it switches to 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can start to tell the different feels of it, because that empty space is very, very necessary to create this little atmosphere of what you're doing. Any questions on the first three patterns right there? Alrighty. So any song will have different patterns that they strum with, but this is the very most usual way that many songs are counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. Other songs might be counted as 1, 2, 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and it does create a different feeling to it. One last thing, if we go ahead and see this number 5, we can see that there's a capital D and then lowercase letters. So this indicates that we really need to emphasize the first downstrum. So let's say I have just a different chord, and it would sound as 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. And it creates again a different feeling to it. So the way to kind of use this and the chord chart is to say stick with one chord and then go into another chord and kind of jump around both of them using these different strumming patterns. Yes.
So it probably just takes practice, but the C, can you go back to the other, please? And the C chord, so that's saying that in the first fret is one finger, the second fret is another finger, and the third fret is another finger?
Yes, they're the 1, 2, 3s are the one index, middle, and then a ring finger.
Yeah, that's a lot of spread.
Yes, that's it's probably one of the most common chords, and it's
Okay.
one of the first difficult ones, just because your fingers aren't used to stretching that awkwardly. So kind of actually the jumping off to a C would be practicing this A minor 7 at the top, just because there's already that similarity between that 1 and 2 and not that third one right there. So it's kind of a cool thing to go from A minor to a C, just because it's like you're only adding one more finger. And same thing with that A7 into this 1, 2, 3 A at the left. So most of these chords, the point of chords is to find the easiest way to go from one chord to another. And it's a couple of things. It's obviously practice and taking your time. And eventually your muscle memory will kick in and you'll kind of feel where the next chord will be, but that's just practice, practice, practice. Questions? Alrighty. So what are chords and strumming patterns good for if we don't have songs to sing along? So let me share this website here for you. There's, of course, if you Google a lot of things, you can usually find a lot of songs. But I wanted to share this one website with you. This one's called Ultimate Guitar. And this is a user-generated website where people come in and put music tablature and chords to songs for people to learn. I think the best way to kind of get started is kind of like as an example. So we have many, many things here, but the one thing that I always focus on is just this search tab here. So let's see that I want to learn a song by, sure, Beatles, classic. We put in Beatles and we get a bunch of information right away. What I want to focus on is chords here. We haven't touched upon tabs or any of these other things. So let's just click on chords. Like any good old social media site, it has ratings, but this time they actually matter. Since this is all user-generated content, people will vote on the best versions of a song. So we have Yesterday here, we have Let It Be, Hey Jude. Let me go into kind of a little something easier, Twist and Shout, the great beginner song. Twist. Same thing, Beatles Twist, and I want to just search up chords. And I'm going to click on the one that has the most stars there. So that's the one here, that's the 900 stars. It will give me a couple of things. One, they'll give me the tuning. We're in the right, this is just basically, you'll start learning the notes of each strings, but this just gives you the indication if it's going to be a different tuning. What key? And this looks very similar. These are also chord charts for the notes of the songs that we're going to be learning. Let me go here into the verse. And let me hide this little thing. So how this works is that many people will put in the chord that goes along with it at the top. So it starts off with an A7. It goes into a D, to a G, and then to an A. So you can pick up your guitar, kind of, oh, this is an A chord, and just kind of strum it once. And you can already tell that it's the start. And then it goes, shake it up, baby, now shake it up, baby, twist and shout. And I'm just doing single strummings, but that's not how the song goes. I think it's, and kind of don't worry too much right now about the strumming. Really worry about making those kind of clean transitions between the chords. This one's a little tricky because it also includes G, which is a little bit of a stretch, and D kind of a little weird in the beginning. But I just kind of wanted to show you this just because the format that it's laid out in, where they give you the chord that's the transition chord at the top of the lyric, and then goes into the other ones. And of course, if you're more familiar with the song, you'll start hearing it too. Oh, this is where they switch, and this is where the other person switches. So this is a great, great website if you're trying to learn basically any song, because it's all user generated, and I've been using this since I was in high school, which was a long time. And it hasn't failed me yet. Questions? Alrighty, so let's one more example. Anybody have any song or artist that they have in mind? I know it puts you on the spot and you can't think of any single song. It happens to me all the time too.
Eventually, I want to do Metallica.
All right, we'll do Acoustic Metallica. So
Oh my gosh.
We'll do Metallica. And we'll do the same where we just want to do chords. And then it's kind of nice because I can actually do acoustic in the search bar. And sometimes they'll say acoustic versions of the songs. So let's say Enter Sandman. And since we only want to focus on chords, let's just do chords. And we have all these great acoustic versions of these songs. Sure, Blackett or acoustic. We haven't really touched upon tabs here. Yes, so this might not be the best example, but it does give you kind of, since we already learned how to read this, you know not to press those, and then if there are no X's on top, then that's just a 0. So that would be, for that particular one, that E5, it's just that just those two first notes, nothing else. You hear that kind of very rough. And then if we go to that D7, we have the same thing, basically the same thing, but we use our first finger on the third string, and we have this open. And of course, Metallica goes a little faster than that, but Metallica might not be the best example for acoustic song, sing-along songs. Sure, Wonderwall. Why not? Classic. I kind of want to have one more example just so I can show you that some songs have a little bit more information. Let me see. Yes, so this one is kind of interesting because it gives you can hear a kind of version of the strumming pattern. Let me see if I can share the audio from my computer. And so on. Very MIDI-ish style. But you can kind of start to follow along the ups and downs. This is a little more complicated too because there's this little gap between the ands and the fours that are a little faster. But a couple other songs will have a similar strumming pattern. I just want to do, let's see. I think we have 2 more minutes, so I think that's okay for right now. But you can see, you can really get lost on this website, just kind of looking for chords and music there. So I really recommend this website. Any questions on anything that we talked about right now? Okay. Well, hope everybody had a great, we still have 2 minutes here before we go back to the whole group. But you have our email. You can, if you say you can, I've been trying to look for this song and I can't find it, send it our way. We're librarians. We can find anything. And this is kind of a little introduction. It is really a lot of information to take in mind. So really do take your time. And it is about both the left hand, which does kind of all the changes, and then the right hand that kind of follows along. So a lot of the kind of mastery comes with, it's the quick changes and even just going through the chord chart one at a time, just making sure that all the notes sound right, there's no clankiness. But of course, I struggled too with a used electric guitar from Radio Shack that was missing a string. So you're all in better shape than I was a couple of years ago in terms of learning how to play this instrument. Alrighty, if no further questions, I guess we can get back here. Last call.
Thank you. Yeah, my guitar is in tune. I'm really happy about that.
Okay, that's great. Yes, tuning is, last thing I mentioned. So sometimes there's this capo at the 2nd fret. Capos are these little kind of clip-on for the guitars that you can put in frets. So sometimes a song will say capo in the 2nd fret, and then you can do the usual similar ones. And that switches the note. So this isn't a C anymore, but it's, I believe, a D note. So that's kind of more music theory, but sometimes it'll say capo at this. Usually too, for higher register sounds, it might be better to do it here because then it sounds a little way more higher. Alrighty, so we'll meet you all on the other side.